Can the Chiefs three-peat? Well, first, we're starting off with the great Seth Kaiser. You know his work from The Athletic, doing film breakdowns with SB Nation. This is one of the great Chiefs ball knowers in the game. Seth, a Super Bowl just a couple days away. Kind of what goes through your mind right now? Just think about your Chiefs and their chances to be the first team in NFL history to win 3 Lombardi trophies.
You know, there's a lot on the line for them. The idea, just to even have a shot at doing what they're trying to do here, you have to win 2 Super Bowls in a row, which is something only a handful of teams have done. And so I think something that they're very aware of is that you might not get an opportunity for something like this again. They know that they're always going to be contenders for the Super Bowl as long as Mahomes is their quarterback, but a chance at a three-peat to legitimately differentiate themselves from the Patriots dynasty, for Mahomes to differentiate himself from Tom Brady in a meaningful way, that opportunity to say, we've done something no one else has ever been able to do, win 3 Super Bowls in a row. I think it's a huge moment, and they've been willing this year to throw more resources into trying to make it happen this year, as opposed to thinking about future years quite as much. You've seen more of the Hopkins trade, signing Kareem Hunt, that sort of thing. They've done some stuff mid-season to really put the emphasis on this year that you haven't seen in past years.
And now when you look at the film, I mean, this is an Eagles pass defense that's the best in the NFL. Vic Fangio takes them from 26 in the sport to first in the sport, but that has not stopped Patrick Mahomes in the past. We saw in the Super Bowl against the Eagles. We saw in the Super Bowl against the 49ers. It does not matter when this guy's on a big stage, he finds a way to get it done. How much of it is just, look, you kind of ignore the regular season stats where the Chiefs weren't great at creating explosive plays, and you're going up against this elite pass defense of the Eagles. Pretty much all bets are off when it's Mahomes on this big stage on Sunday. Am I right?
Overall, the one thing that I tell people is that, especially over the last couple of years, you don't utilize the regular season to try to figure out what the Chiefs are going to do in the playoffs. The offense just looks completely different. Also, they are really only now, with multiple game sample size of having Hollywood Brown back, with DeAndre Hopkins, with Xavier Worthy as a primary weapon. You know, they've been building up to that all year. So what they look like now just really isn't very similar. Anything before December, you can kind of throw out, and even most of December in terms of Chiefs film. It's definitely a different thing for them. It's a strength-on-strength situation. Fangio's defense prides itself on not giving up big plays. They play a lot of conservative-type shells. They rush forward. They don't blitz a ton. A lot of modern NFL defenses have Fangio's blueprints all over them because that's how teams have shut down this wide-open aerial attack of the last decade. The thing is, though, it's a strength on strength because that's the way the Chiefs play. They say, well, we want you're going to have to kill us with death by 1,000 paper cuts. And the Chiefs say, hey, we just so happen to have a bunch of really tiny knives. And that's just how they've beaten teams all year, is with brutally efficient drives. They're perfectly comfortable going 10, 15, 20 plays without making that mistake. A lot of teams aren't comfortable doing that. The Chiefs are. So you think something's got to give there. And it's a really interesting strength on strength matchup with what Fangio likes to do and what the Chiefs like to do.
Yeah, and you look at that weapon on the other side, Saquon Barkley. The key really is, can you stop him? Really, no team has done it this postseason, but the Chiefs, they definitely have a formidable run defense. What do you think is the biggest key to the Chiefs really neutralizing Saquon Barkley in this one, and what are you hoping to see early in this game?
So I think I'll give a personnel aspect and then a preventative aspect. The personnel aspect, I think you're going to look mostly at Leo Chenal, the Chiefs linebacker, who is one of the more important guys on their defense, even though he's got a relatively low snap count. And the reason for that is situational football. He's a guy that they're really comfortable lining up as an extra edge or as a Sam backer or even off the ball, but having him attack the line of scrimmage. He's very, very, very strong. Pound for pound, maybe the strongest guy on the team. He can hold his own on the edge against tackles. He can attack gaps and move guards backwards. He doesn't have great lateral agility and change of direction, so there's a limited role there, but it's very important when they face teams that want to establish the run. The other thing is Spags loves collecting big edges. He, like George Karlaftis, Charles Omenihu, Mike Dana, one thing they all have in common is they're big guys, long arms. He looks to have them stop the run first and then pass rush, not so much with bend around the edge, but collapsing with strength and kind of crushing the pocket around guys, make room for Chris Jones to create havoc. That's going to be the personnel matchup that I'm looking at. The Chiefs, in theory, are built to defend the run in certain ways with how they're set up. And Chanel's going to have a huge role in this game if they want to stop Barkley early. And in terms of the preventative aspect, the Chiefs will handle being nickeled and dimed by a running back. They'll allow that, 5 yards, 6 yards, 7 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards. Oh, there's a -1. And now the team's got to throw the ball. That's how the Chiefs have generally lived against elite backs. The problem with Barkley, of course, is he breaks off one of those 60-yarders, one of those 50-yarders. If they can prevent those explosive plays, they'll live with a 125, 150-yard day from Barkley as long as it takes him, 5 yards a carry to get there.
And as far as the Chiefs on offense, I mean, what is the way to attack this Eagles defense? They got a zone coverage. You got Vic Fangio trying to find ways to really keep Mahomes at bay when he breaks the pocket, when he goes out of structure. Travis Kelce was big the last time these two teams met, but he feels like he's more comfortable with some of the other weapons that he does have. But if you're Andy Reid and you're this Chiefs offense, I mean, how are you attacking this Eagles defense?
I think one of the things you might see, and you actually saw them dust it off, almost their 2018 playbook early against the Bills. Mahomes and company, they kind of ran quite a few RPOs early, which was, 50% of their offense 3 years ago. And they've moved away from it a little bit as the league has caught up to it. But it can work a little bit against some of these zone looks because everyone's looking at the ball. And it's hard to undo a decade of training in how you handle that play action look, those RPOs. Trying to do quick slants to Brown and that sort of stuff into vacated areas in the middle of the field. I think they'll attack it that way. And I think what they'll also do is try to spread out a little bit and essentially flood those shallow and intermediate zones with enough receivers to basically make it impossible to have good zone coverage everywhere. They're comfortable with sight adjustments. Hopkins is not really a separator against man coverage anymore. Hasn't been for a couple of years, but he's very comfortable making sight adjustments. Travis Kelce obviously is. Juju Smith-Schuster obviously is. I think those guys are going to play a huge role in that. I think RPOs are going to be a big thing, and they're going to have some dialed up stuff coming out of motion to Xavier Worthy to try to find numbers advantages with the last second jet sweep type motion across towards, the weaker side of the defense.
Yeah, and as far as just ways to poke holes in this defense, I mean, the intermediate passes against the Eagles have been something where it just has not been their biggest strength, and they've been a great defense all season long, but they ranked 21st in the league in EPL out per play and throws from 10 to 19 yards. Do you think the Chiefs will look to exploit that?
I do, and that's where I think your best shot for a big game out of the Chiefs receivers is probably Hollywood Brown, which is interesting because his usage leading up to the playoffs, he wasn't on the field a ton, but when he was, his target share was huge. And that led me to believe, okay, they're going to keep upping that as they get more and more comfortable with his health. Come playoff time, they'll kind of unleash him. But he was incredibly quiet against Houston with their very talented man coverage corners. He was did a little bit more against the Bills, but not a ton. I think if you've got a team that struggles in the intermediate zone, traditionally, that's where Hollywood Brown has done his best work. I think him and Kelce are the two guys that you'd look at to attack those areas.
And when you look at the film, is it Jalen Carter? I mean, what defensive play really stands out that gives you the most concerns if you're on the Chiefs side?
Jalen Carter is obviously someone to be concerned about. Smith is a good pass rusher. Williams is a good pass rusher. They really don't have any weak spots pass rushing across the board. The player that I'm concerned about the most in terms of being stylistically significant is Josh Sweat. Joe Thuney slid over as all-pro left guard, basically perfect in pass protection when he plays left guard. They slid him over to left tackle. He's got a little over 32-inch arms. Josh Sweat has about 34.5-inch arms, a little longer than that. The way Thuney's a technician, what he's been doing is incredible to play decently at left tackle, sliding over there midseason. I don't know if there's really a precedent for what he's doing. The problem for him, though, one reason he's not a left tackle by trade, where there's more money, he doesn't have the length and he doesn't have the size. And the problem for him has been with power-based rushers. And Sweat has a lot of length, a lot of power. That's how he wins. I'm a little concerned about his ability to just run straight through Thuney's chest. And there's not a lot you can do schematically to protect him from that other than, quick throws like what they were doing against the Bills, rolling pockets, some various RPO and play action type stuff. You can do that, but it limits your straight up drop back game a little bit. So that's the matchup that concerns me the most. I think Jalen Carter, given that he's so often been at the left defensive tackle spot, it would surprise me a little if Fangio changed that up a ton to try to match him up against Caliendo. So I think what you're going to see is Williams against Caliendo with Humphrey needing to provide help and just an absolute bloodbath with Trey Smith against Jalen Carter, which I'm so excited to watch. A couple of awesome players who are so physical. That matchup alone, if that's where they end up one-on-one quite a bit, that could determine a lot of Philly's success on defense and the Chiefs' success on offense.
Yeah, and as far as the X factors go, give me an X factor for the Chiefs on offense.
On offense, it's such an easy one to do because they call him X, but it is Xavier Worthy in two different ways. One, the way they've utilized him is almost like a version of what they were doing with Rashee Rice last year towards the end. Some of these quick hitters, and because of his speed, he's able to take things that might be 5 yards and make them 10 yards. Something that might be a stuff at the line of scrimmage and make it 5 yards. But he's also their best shot at creating a couple of explosive plays over the top. And Fangio hates explosive plays. If you can even hit one of those, just one, that loosens up absolutely everything else in terms of getting them to back off a little bit more, playing a little more too high, doing that sort of stuff. So other than, the obvious, Patrick Mahomes being who he is the X factor. He's the only player in this entire game that you say, if he plays his best game, his team will win. No one else you can say that with almost certainty. With Mahomes, you can. But aside from Mahomes, aside from Kelsey, aside from the obvious, I think it's Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, that's kind of the feeling I get. I mean, the Chiefs have the better QB. The Eagles maybe have better players overall, but we've seen this before. The guy with the better QB wins. It's either it's Brady or if it's Mahomes. You keep it close enough, and you let number 15 go after it. He's going to find a way to get the job done. How about on the defensive side of the football, though?
I think Leo Chenal is the big one. And then the usage of Trent McDuffie is something I'm really curious about. For most of the season, they played McDuffie on the boundary. He's arguably the best slot corner in the NFL as well. They love playing him on the boundary too because he's excellent there. But teams have been able to chew them up in the slot a little bit if they choose to line up Devontae Smith there. I don't love what Spags has done with kind of big slot type defenders with like Shamari Connor. That's a terrible matchup for the Chiefs. I'm curious what they do with that and how they manage to utilize him in a way that makes sense now that Jalen Watson is back and fully healthy. What would make the most sense to me is to have Watson on the boundary, have Josh Williams on the other boundary when you've got nickel sets out there, and line up McDuffie in the slot where he's so great. That's going to, I think, be a huge determining factor in the game, whether or not they're able to utilize him in a way to keep Smith from chewing up some of Spags' zone looks.
Now, as far as how this game plays out, do you expect a game in the 30s? Do you expect something a little more low scoring to potentially great defenses, great coordinators going at it?
I think because both offenses, when the Eagles are running the ball well, they play kind of a ball control style. The Chiefs have played kind of a ball control style for a couple of years now. I think if the Chiefs are able to grab a lead early, I think you're probably going to see a game in the 30s because then you're going to start seeing bombs away stuff to Brown, to Smith, and Hurts is good enough to hit some of those, and those receivers are good enough to hit some of those. I think if the Chiefs don't have a ton of success early, you're going to see the Eagles running the ball a lot more, and you're going to see a lot more dink and dunk from the Chiefs to where it's maybe like 7 meaningful drives for each, 8 meaningful drives for each, and you end up with a game in like the low 20s.
That's right. I'm with you on that one. I'm thinking 27, 24, something in that range. Okay, last two, MVP, and can you throw out a prediction?
I think the MVP will be Patrick Mahomes. The only time he hasn't been the MVP of a Super Bowl was when he was playing with all backups against a great front and the game got away from them. I've just seen this too many times, and I feel bad because people are sick of Chiefs fans and Chiefs analysts just predicting the greatness of Mahomes, but I've just seen it too many times.
We're in that era.
And I think it's 20 playoff games, and he's been great in all but one of them. Even that Super Bowl, he was great in that. Just a bunch of things went wrong. He was terrible in the second half of the 2021 AFC Championship against the Bengals. It's the only time he's played badly in the playoffs. I think Mahomes is the MVP of the game. I think it stays close throughout. A couple of great, evenly matched teams, but I think you get to that second half of the fourth quarter, and Mahomes is going to do something. He'll get the MVP. I think the Chiefs win. I'm going with 31-24.
31-24. Okay, so since you picked the Chiefs to win, let's throw one more out there. Does Travis Kelce propose to Taylor Swift after the game?
I don't think so, but
there's prop bets on. You see that? It's like people betting on this. It's great.
Oh, I would be surprised. I would be less surprised if, a couple weeks after, if they three-peat, that he called it a day, That wouldn't stun me completely if they pulled off the three-peat. It's hard to imagine a better way to ride off into the sunset for a player as great as he is. I hope he doesn't, because he's been so integral to the dynasty the Chiefs have built. But I would be surprised if he proposed. But man, that sure would make for a Disney.
The NFL scriptwriters would love that. That's for sure, right?
Oh, absolutely. They'd love it.
Awesome. Well, Seth Kaiser, thank you so much, guys. You can follow Seth at Real MN Chiefs fan over on the X. Is one of the great Chiefs football minds on the planet. We thank you so much for your time and enjoy the Super Bowl. Hopefully, for your sake, you get the win. But thanks again, Seth, for joining us, my man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Take it easy. There's Seth Kaiser. There he goes. Man, this guy, he knows Chiefs football better than pretty much anyone on the planet. And